Most people would say, how do you build a successful photography business? How do you build a successful photography business? But the key in all of this is you understanding these 4 components. Everything that you've always wanted to do depends on these 4 components. Depends on your ability to understand strategy, your ability to understand tactics, your ability to understand structure, your ability to understand frameworks. So we start by doing the definition. What is strategy? So for us, because of where we are going to, and to make it very simple enough for us to understand, we have to think about strategy as how we decide to show up. So take strategy as the what and the why. Strategy is what, strategy is why. What are you going to stand for? Why are you going to stand for that thing? What are you? Why are you that thing? Strategy is about answering those core questions, the what and the why. Once you're able to answer the what, once you're able to answer the why, you've been able to be clear on what the strategy is. Because at the end of the day, all of us are doing photography, but what sets us apart is our strategy. What sets us apart in all of the things that we do, like everybody on this call and everybody outside this call that are successful are photographers. But what sets one photographer apart, what distinguishes us from each other, is the strategy. So when you think about what that strategy in that sense, you now realize that there is something that we call the core strategy, and there's something that we call the implementation strategy. So there is a core strategy and there is implementation strategy. So those are the 2 forms of strategy that you need to think about as a photographer. You need to think about that every single time. 2 forms of strategy: the core strategy and the implementation strategy. I want to give you an example. If you guys can hear me, use the emoji so I know you can hear me. With this example, great. So with this example, we all know Kelechi Amadi-Obi. We all know Emmanuel Oyeleke, right? If you look at their businesses, at the very core of it, the very core of their business, they are all fashion photographers. That is the core strategy. Fashion photography, the core strategy. But when you look at them without thinking about the core strategy, they look as if they are different people. They look distinct to themselves. And that's because of the implementation strategy. Though at the core, they are building a core strategy that looks the same. They are fashion photographers. But when it comes to implementation of the core strategy, they become different. I'm saying that to say this. When you look at people doing the same thing might be at the core strategy. But what distinguishes us is the implementation strategy. And you need to nail those 2 things down. Remember what we said, the what and the why. So once you think about yourself, what you want to do, let's say for example, you say, my core strategy is I want to be a fashion photographer. My core strategy is I want to be a beauty photographer. My core strategy is I want to be, what's the word for it? A beauty photographer. I want to be a portrait photographer. I want to be a luxury wedding photographer, because in the luxury space, you need to really define the what. In the documentary space, you need to define the what. In the portraiture space, you need to define the what. So you need to be very clear on what you're going to be, which is the core strategy. You need to say, in the wedding space, what I'm going to be in this wedding space is I am going to be a luxury wedding photographer. You can say in this wedding space, I want to be a destination wedding photographer. In this wedding space, I want to photograph people who do outdoor weddings alone. I want to photograph northern weddings. I want to photograph traditional weddings. Or I want to be a portrait photographer that does this kind of photography for elites. I want to be a photographer for everybody. You need to identify your very core strategy. Because what makes you win is not you saying you're doing photography. What makes you win is your ability to identify that what for you. If I use myself as an example, I told myself there are different parts of documentary photography. And I told myself, I want to be a storyteller for non-profits. Meaning that if you're not a non-profit person, you are not my client. I am not going to position myself to get you to hire me. So which now brings us to the part that until you are able to fix the strategy, you will not be able to know where to position. Please, if you have a question, all you just need to do is to put in the comment section. We'll look at all of the questions as we go. If you cannot hear us, type in the comment section. Every single thing that you want to do, type in the comment section. That way we don't interrupt the flow of the class. So until the end of the class, we can now start asking the questions and all of that. But you can put it there so that we don't miss it or you don't forget to ask the questions. I hope that helps. So at the end of the day, once I decided that I am going to do documentary photography for non-profits, what I decided was that any other person that is hiring documentary photographers are not my clients. So what I was trying to say was that immediately that I said that, okay, I am going to be a non-profit photographer, that was the core strategy, the very core strategy. That means I wasn't just any other documentary photographer, meaning that every other thing that I would do in the tactics would be everything that would promote, position, brand me as the photographer for non-profits. That is why the strategy is the most important part. Because every single thing that you're going to do afterwards, which is most of the time what most people are worried about. Most photographers, we are worried about the tactics. We are worried about the kind of videos we put out. We're worried about whether we should do BTS. We are worried about whether we should post carousels. We are worried about whether we should post videos, reels. We are worried about whether we should do a YouTube channel and all of that. Those things I just mentioned are not strategy. Those things are tactics that will help you deliver on the strategy. So once you are clear on the strategy you're using for your business, all the other things that you would do, would align in helping you get to that point. For example, if you say you're going to be a luxury wedding photographer, you could build a strategy for it. If you say you want to be a fine art photographer, you could build a strategy around that. If you say you're going to be a beauty photographer, not just a beauty photographer, then when it comes to implementation strategy, you can say with beauty photography, because there are different parts of beauty photography. There is hair, there is makeup, there is nail, there is eyelashes and all of those, hair extensions and the likes. So there are different parts of beauty photography. But most of the time, we are worried when people say I'm a beauty photographer, they are tied to makeup. But makeup is just one part of that ecosystem. When you think about beauty at its core, there are different parts of the things that makes up beauty. So if you can say, you know what, I'm going to be that beauty photographer that deals with nails. I am going to be that beauty photographer that deals with nails. So all you're going to do is become the best nail photographer you can ever be. So that any nail brand that is looking for a photographer for a campaign, instead of going for someone that is just a beauty photographer, would search out a photographer that is great at photographing nails. And that's where you will now be able to charge a high price point for what you do. But if you just want to be a beauty photographer and you're photographing nails, you're photographing makeup, you're doing lashes, you're doing hair extensions, you're doing all of the other things, foundation and all of those things, you are just everywhere. So once you're trying to build the strategy, think about the core strategy on one side. This is what everybody would know me for. But think about the implementation strategy, which is these are the things that would define me. These are the things that would differentiate me between this other photographer that is doing the same thing at the core and me that is doing this thing. That is how you build something that is different. And of course, there's this other part where when you think about you as a person, you should know that there are things that are unique to you. There are lifestyle that is unique to you. There are behaviors, there are patterns, there are things that are just you, that makes you unique. Your ability to harness those things, those character traits, and build it into something that is you, is what will make you sell, which is in the implementation of the strategy, right? So let's say you are a cheerful person. Let's say you love fashion. Let's say you like sports. Let's say you are religious. Let's say you're trustworthy. Let's say you are excellent. You love excellence in delivery. You can pick all of those good traits that you possess, put them together, and implement them across your core strategy, which might have been like the nail photographer, or which might have been the food photographer that is just photographing in restaurants. Because you can do food photography, you can do for campaigns, like where you have commercial photographers, right? You can do that. But you can also say, you know what, I'm not going to photograph for advertorials like on the advertising agencies, because we have things that we call ad agencies, the advertising agencies. Those ones are the ones that are producing video, pictures, graphics for top brands ranging from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all of those. Pepsi don't hire photographers. Coca-Cola doesn't hire photographers. The ad agency that they hire are the ones responsible for hiring photographers. So if you're building a strategy and you say you want to be, let's say, a product photographer, you need to now build an implementation strategy that will make you unique, while asking yourself, who, with this strategy I've chosen, with this set of things that distinguishes me, who are the possible people that are top of that funnel that are my clients? So that means all of your core communication, your messaging, your positioning is geared towards the people that you've identified as the people that are going to be your client.